Hi, you're watching India Post Live, India's first web TV news conversation online. I'm Shivraj, and right now we're discussing something very topical and pretty much breaking news: the conflict in Iraq and the spillover it's having on India and Indians. So let's take a look at the latest. The Indian government has admitted that 40 Indians have been abducted in Mosul in Iraq. We're not sure who's abducted them, but the rumor is that it is the Sunni militant group, the shadowy group, who calls itself the Islamic State in Iraq and Levant, or the ISIS. What we also know is that the former ambassador to Iraq, Mr. Suresh Reddy, has been sent there to enhance the entire operation on ground in the mission. The Indian government is urging any Indians, and there is no real number that they can put to the number of Indians there, because there are some who are registered with the embassy, some who aren't and have gone as contract workers, to come back. And also, the Indian government has set up a helpline for any of those wanting to know about their relatives stranded in Iraq. Well, joining us in the conversation in studio is Hamid Siraf from JNU, and former ambassador to Iraq, and also a comrade in a former hostage crisis that happened in 2004, 41 days, Mr. R. Dayakar. Ambassador Dayakar, I think the current situation is very fluid, but it's also very precarious, isn't it?
Yes, very much, very much. No one knows who are the main actors. All that they know is a non-state actor. It is not a government. It has no a particular telephone number or email or address to contact them. But its impact is being felt Iraq and beyond. And the latest, of course, is the unfortunate taking hostage of these 40 workers. And the impact is felt in New Delhi in terms of diplomatic initiatives and to get them back safely and home. So the developments are quite, how to say that, startling, of course. And the impact in political, strategic, diplomatic terms, and not to talk of economic terms, they're far-reaching. And no one knows how would be the denouement, in what course it will play out, in what way. So we have to keep the developments. If you allow me, I'll just dilate on that a bit. From the regional perspective, you know, this is basically a Sunni group, a fanatical Sunni group, advocating a particular theological doctrine, which comes in a direct conflict with the majority of the Iraqi people. You know, Iraq has nearly 60% people are Shias. The rest are Sunnis, split between Arabs and Kurds. Kurds are also Sunnis, majority. So these people want to take control of the entire Iraq and preside over the destiny of 60% of Shias, contradicting the Shia beliefs and the practices. This is quite untenable. So there is conflict is inevitable and inbuilt into their theology, doctrines, and so on. So if they take control of Baghdad, their neighbors, and Baghdad, no, beyond, they want to move to Najaf and Karbala.
Right.
Which has a very sinister motives.
Right.
And if they do that, Iran would not sit idle, or unlikely, because it is their most religious important place of pilgrimage. Million people visit every year. So once they move in, others would not keep quiet. The Turks are in the north, the Saudis are in the south. It could become a cockpit of fighting for proxies, or the directly, overtly, or covertly for the various people. I think in the situation, I think the solution lay with, in my view, the United States, whom people say are the original creator of the problem. Okay, the solution also lies with them, in the sense, you know, the world may be multipolar and etc., people, but Gulf, the unipolar, and America is the only one who has the key to the solutions.
So I'm going to come back to that, Ambassador, but Shafaz, you had a very impassioned speech you made about neo-imperialism and the fact that the current state of affairs is because of American intervention historically. So what, from your view, is really why it's come to this state?
What I feel in this crisis, what has happened that this is, everybody knows that this is oil politics. And the Sunnis, who had once power over Iraq, and when you go back to 20s or during the so-called Iraqi revolution, in 1950, Sunnis have major part in that history. What now happened is that after America left, withdrawn its troops, there were private players in oil companies and in oil politics. So the Sunnis again, they tried to take the power over the oil refineries, and again they are trying to retreat their histories, but this is not the way. The way they are doing, many of my friends, we had a very good discussion some days back. We are saying what had happened to these militant groups when America was there.
And interestingly now, there are murmurs of back-channel diplomacy between the US and Iran on finding some solution to what's happening in Iraq right now.
I don't think so that they will arrive at some solution, because Iran has historically against Iraq. When you go back to Saddam Hussein era, what happened that
the United States armed him against Iran.
Yeah, and America supported, the US supported Saddam, and he said, the then president of the US said that the Iraqi president Saddam Hussein, he's trying to take over the other neighboring countries. And again what happened? They stood against Saddam. So this has taken a way back to the civilians, the way back.
So the neighboring countries actually play a very major role in what happens in Iraq now in the absence of Saddam Hussein, because there is no strong leadership. But coming back to your point, Ambassador Dayakar, at the time when in 2004 you were at the helm of negotiations, the release of the truckers in Iraq, at that time there was an American administration that was behind the administration in Iraq. You had a clear command and a means of recourse. Now it seems a lot more diffuse, so it is a far much tougher job for MEA or the government, or the new government that's really been Christian by this new foreign policy crisis, to really do anything.
Both the times, 2004 and now, both are shadowy organizations. In fact, 2004, the situation was much more chaotic. There were American forces, there was insurgency, there was the several militias fighting and so on. And it took quite a while before even establishing. And it took finally 41 days of patient negotiation to get our people back. Now, the situation is more or less the same, but there are some leads. First of all, it's happened in Mosul, which is a Sunni hotline. We know who are broadly, that is IS group. It has 4 components according to the press reports. The one is the jihadists, second is the ex-Ba'athists, third is the Sunni tribal leaders.
And there's no spillover from Syria and the conflict there.
It is spillover from the thing for political reasons, because this is 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 originally an Iraqi sort of thing, but they utilized the Arab Spring to create a space for themselves there, and Eastern Syria is in their control now. The area adjoining now Western Iraq is with them. So there is a contiguity is there. There is a definitely, Syrian situation is not the creator, but it's the facilitator for the expansion of this. 2 important developments, one of which is Syrian situation, second is the withdrawal of American forces, 2011, removed a major hurdle or a countervailing force within Iraq. So the Maliki government has to face these people.
And you know, Ambassador, it's a very difficult task, because while you have 86 registered Indians with the embassy, there are a whole lot of other Indians in Iraq doing different kinds of jobs. What can the government in this position do to A, first find them, and B, find them safe passage back to India?
You know, the number of Indians over the years has come down. Previously, large number of them were employed in the American bases.
Sure.
2011, when they finally left, almost all the Indians working in the American base have come down. The rest of the people who are there in the Kurdistan, safest place in Iraq said to be, There are several thousands working in the malls, mining, petroleum, and so on. The second concentration is in Basra, southern Iraq, Shiite thing, which is again comparatively safe, free from there. Third is Najaf, Karbala, where the pilgrims go there. There are Dawoodi Bohras, there are others who go there, and they've been settling for
But there's some also very tragic stories of Malayali nurses in places like Tikrit who've been holed up in the hospital, and some of them are saying that they don't want to come back because it's such a dire financial situation. So in a situation like that, when you have a security concern and you have dire stories like that, what can the MA really do? What can Mr. Suresh Reddy, who's obviously a seasoned former ambassador who's now gone to reinforce the entire operation on ground in Baghdad, what can they really do?
You know, for the people to stay on, majority want to stay on Tikrit for the reason that their threat perception is different. Not that they're desperate for money. The money can never give back lives. So it is basically at this point of them feel that they're safe because the hospital environment, friends, Iraqis, they're taking care of them well. But you never know what will happen. And second thing, health is an area, hospitals are not touched by law, by compassion, and because they are needed.
By the laws of war.
The laws of war. Yeah. And also in a sense, so
but would a group like ISIS really be governed by any norms? Because they seem to be quite brutal. From what reports we're hearing, is that they're going into towns and they're being indiscriminate about women and children as well.
The mainly people killed 1,800 people in Mosul. They're all Air Force trainees, supposed to be Shias, would be potential warriors later on and so on. They're ruthless to their enemies. Once they destroy his enemy is ruthless. Obviously, these are not there. But I'm not suggesting that they should stay on. In the critical area, that's area occupied by the Sunnis, the number of Indians there probably run into hundreds, not thousands. Tikrit, Ambar, Mosul, a lot of them in the health service, construction, oil sector, and so on. The government has told them, come out, and whatever assistance they give the local government. The point is that point of contact is not there. Who should they contact in this area under the Sunnis there? Because there's no one there. It will take time, over time. And they're not only Indians, there are other nationals. Bangladeshis are there, Pakistanis are there, Filipinos are there, and other nationalities are also there. So they're all trying, and Egyptians. So what's needed is that from Tikrit to Baghdad is about 100, 150 kilometers by road. To get, there's no airport in Tikrit. To get them by road, it is still
very dangerous.
There could be fake checkposts and so on, kidnappings and so on. They are not deliberately targeted.
Right.
They are not deliberately targeted.
Interestingly, you're talking about a lot of South Asians who are in Iraq, who are probably right now at greatest risk. So we're joined from Islamabad by Yasir Latif, who's both a lawyer and a journalist. Yasir, what is your point of view? What's happening in Iraq currently?
Well, you see, the problem in Iraq is essentially one of ancient rivalries coming, ancient religious dogma coming to, sort of a collision, into a collision with modernity. You've got, these two dogmas that have been going on for 1400 years. And I kind of think that the state itself, the Iraqi state, the way it was sort of conceived and created, there were a lot of diverse people that were, sort of borders were driven, borders were made around them. Now what we see is a situation where that state is imploding. I feel that essentially this is a very modern problem, the problem of the demise of the nation state, and in face of religious dogma which neither recognizes nor appreciates national boundaries. So you see a greater situation in terms of the Irani state getting into the action, and obviously other states like Pakistan, where there are significant Shia populations. Pakistan has the second largest, and many Pakistanis are in fact pilgrims to Iraq, in Karbala and wherever.
Yasir, what about the concern in Islamabad about Pakistani workers? Because there are a lot, or those working in infrastructure projects in Iraq. Has the government made any statement on their well-being or their safety?
Well, there isn't any statement to my knowledge. However, I know for a fact that Pakistan Pakistan has a lot of pilgrims who are at the moment based in Karbala or Najaf, and I would imagine that at some point Pakistan would be taking some action in that regard. Uh, yeah, I mean, there hasn't been sort of a clear statement from Islamabad on Pakistanis in Iraq. I would imagine that there are many.
And what's the mood like on the Pakistani streets when it comes to reading about what's happening in Iraq right now? Because there is obviously a lot of anti-America sentiment on the street there, as in the entire region. And the fact is that, and it's one of our studio guests was pointing out that this is really a spillover of what the United States has been doing over the last few generations in that region.
Well, I think that is very true. I think that unlike the British, who were very good at sort of understanding the terrain that they were going into, our neo-imperialist masters, the Americans, are not very educated when it comes to approaching areas. You got a situation where Americans basically went in, and you had the British with them. In this case, Tony Blair, who now says that it wasn't his fault. But they went in and they basically took out a government that was maintaining a very sort of a fragile nationalist secular facade. And now that was taken out, and you've got basically a Shia majority government which does not want to include Christians and Sunnis in it. And now, and in the north, you have Kurds, the Kurds who are, just waiting for independence. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking to a Kurdish woman very recently, and she told me that they are ready to go their own way in a year or two. So you've got a situation where these three very different sort of, not very different people, they're obviously very related, but in terms of their identification, their identity politics, they now see each other as separate. And so you've got a situation where a tripartite partition of Iraq is becoming quite a possibility, if not a probability.
All right, Yasser, thank you so much for joining us there from Pakistan. I think it was a very important and interesting perspective. Let's go across to another guest who joins us from Ranchi, Rajat Arsh. Rajat, you heard that voice from Pakistan saying that there is a huge concern that if the ISIS, has its way, topples the current government in Iraq, there are so many splinter groups. There are the Kurds, there are the Sunnis, there are the Shias, some feeling marginalized, the Christians. Do you see, when you're reading and observing what's happening in Iraq, a real and present danger of the country falling apart into different little mini nations?
I would say that the danger is going to come more if America is going to intervene into the situation, because at that time they will not be differentiating between the people there. They would be just bombing the places. So it would be more of concern for other civilians and innocents if America intervenes. And I was more concerned, like, if about people, innocent people stuck there, that if there would have been VIPs or other VIPs or something like that, then the external Ministry of Affairs would behave similarly, or would it have been more active and more
So that's a question we're going to put to the former ambassador who's in our studio. Ambassador Diakar, the criticism is that, and he has a valid point, had there been very high-profile Indians there, there would have perhaps been a more immediate and more sort of proactive stance. Right now, it's almost as if the MEA is on a back foot reacting to what's happening on ground.
Oh, frankly, it's for the Ministry of External Affairs to say so.
Sure.
But I'll give you my personal opinion. The situation would be the same, the parameters would be the same, circumstances are same, limitations would be the same. But the concern is this would be there. That might give more visibility to the action thanks to media interest. When the VIPs are there, media also pays more attention. So the visibility would be there. But the dynamics, the speed would face the same challenges, same compulsions and same limitations. So I do not see there could be any different thing. This is my personal opinion, but for the Ministry of External Affairs to answer that. In this particular scenario, it became known only yesterday, the workers lost their, not known, because they moved in a panic to get to the nearest station. Probably they were in Kurdistan, etc. So they fell into the hands of these people until it got confirmed. So the same thing would happen if a VIP lost his way, but VIP would be better informed, better coordinate, better, and sort of thing, probably would not get into such situation. But these poor people, workers, who went there for living, they have nothing to do with the politics, they have nothing to do with the Shia, they have nothing to do with Sunni, and they got into the trap.
So, it's a question of collateral damage. I think the current US administration has become far more sensitive to the criticism of collateral damage than maybe the last one, or the one well before Obama. And I think what's happened is a lot of people are viewing this as ominously another failure like the failure in Afghanistan. Do you believe that the United States will now take the multilateral route and not dismiss it as it did in the past?
To me, it appears that America is vacillating for a variety of reasons. It is their created problem in a sense.
Sure.
Partly also the Maliki government, because in 2011 they did not give them privileges and immunity to their soldiers.
Right.
So Americans cannot work without a legal cover. They could not be touched whatever they do. Elsewhere in Afghanistan, same thing. Privileges and immunity is a question. So they left. Having left, there is a vacuum to which this moved there. Now they are positioned a carrier there. You see, this is a urban guerrilla warfare. It's not like hitting Saddam.
It's not traditional adversaries.
You don't know where the enemy is hiding and so on.
Even the non-state actors are diffused.
That's right. Urban. This is Saddam Hussein. No, he had a Baath Party headquarters. You had a military headquarters. You had this ministry and dam there and precision bombing. So the collateral damage was minimal during the bombing time. Subsequently, 1 lakh people were killed in Iraq. That's a different in the insurgents in count. So this kind of thing will not happen. The boots on the ground are needed. That means American soldiers should move in face to face and hit the thing and hit and set. Otherwise, enormous collateral damage, as Rajat said, collateral damage from the aerial bombing would be enormous because these guerrillas know how to run away and shoot and scoot.
Absolutely.
But the innocent victims would be the civilians.
And that's the danger because there's so many Indians unaccounted for on ground.
No, before the water, they give a time for the foreigners to move out, and their kind of thing, certain to the minimal, at least they will do this kind of thing, giving the warnings, move away, bombing. But the aerial thing will not serve any political purpose apart from causing a collateral damage of, how to say that, unforeseen levels in this particular setting.
So, Sarfraz, you were talking earlier about, there was a debate at JNU around what's happening in Iraq. What's the mood like there vis-a-vis what India should do in the current situation?
In the current situation, what the government is trying to do, just it has created a helpline number. And what I think...
Okay, so forget, what's happening with the current crisis, but at a larger level, because India is aspiring to, a Security Council status.
You see, this problem is not only in Iraq. The Indians who go to other Gulf countries, they also face problems. The workers, the common man who just to earn living, they face problems, and we need a serious some foreign policy on this. That during such situations, there should be some kind of some kind of strategy by the government so that they could be brought back.
Okay, and I'm going to go to Rajat. Rajat, what's your view on that? Because you had raised that, right? You sort of brought up the VIP, but what's your view on the need for a...
I was concerned because MEA has been saying that we are we are closely observing the situation, but when the things happened on 10th and 11th, why didn't they have been active to bring out those nurses and workers from there? Why when they are kidnapped, then we are saying they are kidnapped and now we have to do something? Why is it so?
All right. Ambassador Darakar, of course, the idea was right to set up an India Overseas Ministry within MEA. There were the institutions that were set up. But the criticism is that somehow the response mechanism and sort of the institutional mechanisms don't ever seem to be working when it comes to Indians abroad. The missions don't seem to have a proper record. They have no means of reaching out to them and sort of providing them that safeguard and well-being.
I'll speak for Iraq. This is a particular situation. Iraq has a very special case situation. The security even for their own Iraqi ministers and people is quite precarious, so their movements are restricted. So it is not like elsewhere, you can have a contacts immediately, you can move there and so on. So it is in that given scenario, there are serious limitations. Even to take out the nurses from Tikrit by road to bring them, it has fraught with risks at this point of time. So the man in the embassy will have to take a spot decision. Obviously, out of 80 things, only 43, or only 20 or 30 want to come back because of whatever their perception.
And you don't have the luxury, like the last time, of US cover.
This time, each one for himself in Iraq for safety, actually, including the Iraqis. That's why if you see that thing in the reports, each one is buying their weapons. Now the weapons in the market has 3 times AK-47 pistols, ammunition, and so on. So each one has to defend himself because the central government in Baghdad has been just hardly 10 years. And the previous army vanished, previous security, they have built up the thing, which is not strong.
So what is at stake for India if the worst case scenario happens, Iraq falls to pieces? Because there is also now a very strong economic pipeline that's been set up in Iraq, hasn't there been, from an export perspective from India?
You know, Iraq, I think de jure partition may take a long time, but de facto, by which fact, maybe not very far. For instance, already Sunnis are controlling Sunni territory, plus including in Syria. And the Kurds have taken their own disputed area, Kirkuk, and kept that. They utilize the opportunity to move and sort of thing. So they have taken what have been negotiating for this. The rest is Shia land. But a de jure partition would not be possible unless the neighboring countries and sort of thing. I think Iraqis have a sense of history, sense of common identity. So I don't think they will fall apart.
So do you think India should push for a multilateral and multi-regional sort of solution and try and force sort of the greater powers to come to maybe a conference and look at a proper solution? Because right now it seems that everyone's out for their own interest.
I think a stable, united Iraq is the interest of not only in India, in the interest of the region and elsewhere. Because a Shia entity, Sunni entity, they will not be at peace. They will be fighting with each other as a state actors, non-state. So that's not good for anyone. And polarization, certainly not for India. So there should be an effort, but India by itself would not be. I think she must consult other countries,
right,
come to an arrangement. And I think conceptually it is possible to bring them together. That needs to be operationalized. Right. So it needs a multilateral consultation, regional, international, so on.
Yasser, you had an intervention as well. You wanted to say something about solutions. So let's look at solutions. What can be the way forward?
Well, I think one of the things that can be done and one of the things that needs to be done is to bring all parties to the table, tell the Iraqi Kurdistan region, look, if you want to go your independent way, there is a time and place for that. But for now, an autonomous Iraqi Kurdish region within Iraq with some sort of constitutional guaranteed safeguards for the various minorities, which could be built into a constitution for a federal democratic Iraq. I think that would be the best possible solution. Kind of like a cabinet mission plan for Iraq is what is on the cards, or what should be on the cards, or else you'll see partition.
All right. Rajat, coming to you for last comments, what would you like seeing happening next?
I don't think that if there is a meeting held with all sort of people and there'll be some Santi solution or something like that, because it's about oil there. Until it's like oil is finished, the turmoil will be there and there and there. Okay. I don't know when it will end.
I'm going to throw that to Sarfraz because you opened the show with the whole idea that oil is at the center. Do you think there can be a solution given that oil prices are looking on the rise, crude is going up, it's going to have a huge spillover effect?
Yeah, it will have more effect on the countries in South Asia, because you see we are mostly dependent on the Gulf for oil, and what we have been doing historically, we are skipping to take some perfect positions in this kind of politics where the US intervenes, where the Russia intervenes, and then again you see what India has been doing. Sometimes the government, whatever the government at the center, they shift with the US or the Russia or with the people or with the government in those Gulf countries, and this will seriously affect on the inflation in India.
Okay.
Because when there will be prices going high of the crude oil, certainly this will affect.
Absolutely.
And there will be a lot of hue and cry over this.
So let's give the most experienced person in the room the last word. So what would you say are priority items on the list for the new NDA government to meet this crisis?
Before that, I'll just make a small factual correction. The Americans may have come to Iraq looking for oil control, but Iraqis were too smart to outsmart them. The biggest investor in Iraq for the oil sector is China, not America, because they put such a terms that America, none other company could get any drilling rights. Of course, they buy the oil. Their companies buy the oil. They supply the oil field equipment and so on. So in reality, the Iraqis have put what you call not a production sharing. They don't say we don't share. What you call service contract. You help us drill and take service fee. Americans didn't want that. And the most competitive Chinese offered the lowest rate for service and they walked away. Indians are also trying. So this aspect, although Americans came for that, Iraq is outsmart. Iraq is very smart, I tell you, all of them, whether it's previous government, this government. Coming back to this, what the new NDA government should do is, it should see Iraq situation in the regional context. And it has two roles to play. One is an immediate concern of the safety of the Indians and so on. Second thing is a little medium-term and long-term sort of thing, stability of Iraq. Because mind you, if there is extremists to take root in Iraq, they could impact sections of the Indian society, radicalizing the people and so on. Both the sides, there are Shias and Sunnis. So it is in their interest to ensure a moderate. Iraq is by nature, of course, they're religious, but they're not fundamentalist. They're not extremist. They say they mind your religion, we mind ours. So that kind of people, by and large. So they must consult with the regional parties and to come to, because the regional proxies are also having a lot of influence
Absolutely.
on Iraq things. Come to see that certain status quo anti-prevent address the concerns on. America is also taking the same thing, come for the political conciliation and so on, sort of thing. So India can take
A leadership role.
an initiative, start consulting and so on, find a common ground. It's not an immediate thing. It will take quite a while. And then work towards the thing. At least the immediate thing is not to see the situation worsens further.
Absolutely. All right.
And then try to roll back slowly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ambassador Dayakar. Thank you so much, Sarfraz. Thank you so much, Yasser and Rajat, for joining us there in this conversation. You too can also join in on the conversation by logging on to our website, indiapostlive.com. Continue the tweets at #IndiaPostLive. Thank you for watching.